Have you ever been in a class or a meeting, and as you've been taking notes or listening or participating, you're doodling on the margins of your papers or even on the top, or even using an entire page to draw doodle art or a design or a shape? That may be looked upon as not paying attention or daydreaming, but did you know that your brain actually craves doodling? And you may protest and say, no, wait, I'm not an artist, so my brain does not crave that. But when we combine that desire for the brain to wander with that kinesthetic of touching pen or pencil to paper to keep us present, what happens in the flow of those doodles is actually more powerful than just sitting there and listening. Presidents of the United States and congressmen are known for doodling during strategic meetings. So what do they know that we don't know? And then when you look at those doodles, what do they mean? Are doodles significant? Can they be analyzed? And what is the message of your doodle? So if you're a doodler, listen up. And if you're not a doodler, grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, because you may want to add this to your repertoire of superpowers. And especially if you direct and lead people, you may want to see why you want a company of doodlers. Hello, hello, hello. You are listening to the No Brainers Empowering Possibilities Show. These are dialogues of encouragement with fresh perspectives, invitations to ahas, a little bit of science, a dash of behavioral psychology, and skills and tools that you can use right now. So if leveling up is on your radar, my friend, you are at the right show. I'm your host, Roseanne Marsh, and I'm the author of the teen and the parent empowerment curriculum called Level Up. And you are listening to episode number 61. Your brain wants to doodle. I sat in a corporate meeting and I was taking notes, and I looked over at a colleague of mine, and she had out various colors of pens. Quite a rainbow arrangement of them. And not only was she taking notes in different colors, but she was adding little doodles along with it. And at a break, I asked if I could see her notes, and wow, they were colorful. They were bright. They were sprinkled with diagrams and shapes and forms. And periodically there would be something that was actually fairly artistic. And I asked her if she'd always been taking notes this way. And she said, no, it's a fairly recent thing, but she found that as she created her note pages in this way, it made more sense for her. She said the doodles would just come out and seem to help her remember a specific principle or point. And then she said, I really couldn't draw, but now I copy ideas into my notes as I go. And it's as if at one glance at my notes, I remember the conversation that was happening. Now, I had always taken notes and underlined or written in caps when something was really important. And the things that were super important, I put brackets around. And I did put some doodles. And there's one particular shape that I really liked, that when something was incredibly important, I would always put that little doodle there. But I never thought about using different colors. So you can say I kind of had pen envy. And anyone who knows me knows that I have multiple sets of spectrums of colored pens, and they're all a fine point, which is what I prefer. But what is a doodle? A doodle is a drawing made while a person's attention is otherwise occupied. Doodles are simple drawings that can be like concrete representative meanings, or it could be a composition of random shapes and abstract lines. So doodlers, have really gotten a bad rap over the years because it's interpreted that they're not paying attention. But did you know that our brains actually benefit from doodling? When we need to pay attention to something, when we need to focus, the three senses of the audio, visual, and kinesthetic, and all the others, see, hear, taste, touch, smell, etc., are really important. And so the more senses that we can engage, the more comprehension can happen. And when we engage all of those three, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Especially when the kinesthetic is the writing skill, we're able to stay in the here and now in a very mindful state. Now, when we lose focus and start to daydream, it takes a lot of brain action to be able to go into that daydream state. It takes all of our prefrontal cortex to just really focus there. But here's what's remarkable. When we start to doodle, it's keeping us in the present, and it's actually allowing more blood flow through the prefrontal cortex in that area of the brain that's linked to regulating our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. So what ends up happening is, instead of going into a daydream state and all of our attention going there into like a different realm, so to speak, you're able to stay focused in the here and now. But it's like activates the brain, those unfocused circuits. It activates those, and then it gives the focus circuits kind of a break, and it allows in more creativity and that ability to solve problems. And that's as per Harvard University. So instead of being unconscious about what you experience, you're in a state of consciousness that is actually allowing you to understand and retain more. So there's lots of different kinds of doodling. There's Zen doodling, there's the medallion doodling. But when we can doodle, we can actually cement the information in better than if we just stand there or sit there and listen. Now, there's a fairly well-known study by Jackie Andrade in applied cognitive psychology, and she found that people who doodled while listening to like a monotonous telephone message actually recalled 29% more information after the call than those who were just listening. I kept thinking, did some of them just like intuitively doodle? I mean, how did that happen? So I did a deep dive into what that little study was, so I could kind of understand a little bit. But the right criteria was that they had to listen to very monotonous set of phone calls, people calling in, and they were responding as to whether or not they were going to come to a party. And so they were instructed that they were to write down the names of those that would be coming and ignore the names of those who would not be coming. Now, the only difference was one set of people were told to fill in little dots and squares on their paper as they were listening to this information. All of the doodlers, of course, a little square and a circle is, one of the easiest ways to start doodling, could understand better, got 100% accuracy, while the other non-doodlers didn't even get all of the names. So great. But how could I use doodling? I'm not going to listen to a monotonous phone call, but doodling can help you relieve stress. And it's a way to let things out. So not only does it increase your memory, but it allows you to get stress out, those things that aren't serving you. Doodling is also a visual language. So when we lack the words to be able to articulate how we feel, doodling can help us express those emotions in just another way. It's another way of telling our story, and it calms down the brain. So there's lots of ways that we can let things out, either through explosive emotions or retreating or numbing or returning to bad habits. But when we can kinesthetically and visually and auditorily and emotionally pour ourselves out onto a piece of paper, we can relieve the pressure valve. Isn't that cool? So increased memory and relieving our stress. Okay, so that's big. So doodling can also enhance our creativity, and it can help us generate ideas. Have you ever come up against something where you had to use some creativity and you're like so stuck? You're like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not going forward. And you don't know what to do besides taking a break and maybe walk around a little bit. Well, guess what? You can start doodling. Just don't have any expectations of where it's going to go. Just let it go for a little while. And that's the beauty behind doodling. Doodling has no end mark. Well, it's supposed to look like this when it's done. It's just free flowing. But then when you go back to your project, you'll be surprised at the fresh ideas you have and the creativity that can come forward. Another thing doodling does, it brings out that inner child within us. Remember how creative and spontaneous we used to be? And it didn't matter. We weren't worried about judgments from other people. If you colored within the lines, it didn't matter. If you were an artist or not, you just drew for the sake of drawing. learning to bring out that inner child can be done in doodling. Okay, so doodling can help you with your memory. It can keep you in the present. It can serve as a release valve for stress, anxiety, and it can help with our creativity, especially when we involve other people. Now, before we talk about how do we interpret our doodles and what do they mean, let's talk a little bit about how can you use doodling more effectively. So Carol Edmondson, she's the author of Healing Power of Doodling, Mindfulness Therapy to Deal with Stress, Fear, and Life Challenges. That's the name of her book. She used the power of doodling to help her stay positive through two bouts of breast cancer. She said, well, it may sound a bit crazy, but doodling can actually help calm the racing mind and bring it back to a more quiet, restful space, not unlike meditation. And when it comes to the cost of managing your mental health, this is her still talking, doodling is more affordable than therapy. She says it's very cost effective to help deal with the stress of everyday life. In fact, a pen and a pencil and paper is all you need to get started. I'm going to add now and add some colored pencils or add some colored pens just to make it even more fun. Now, I truly look at the trend of coloring books, the adult coloring books, the mandalas. There is a mindfulness de-stressing what happens in your life. So when doodling, it's just a little bit different because you're going to come up with your own design. So here are some of her ideas, Edmondson's ideas, on how we can use doodling in our lives. You ready? If you have children or grandchildren, create a family doodling night for a chance to spend some quality time together. So this is about teaching children the importance of integrating a healthy wellness strategy in their lives, as well as having fun together. Wouldn't that be fun? Big doodling night. Also, doodling is also a smart tactic for beginning brainstorming sessions at work. It provides people a time to settle down and reset their minds. If you encourage everyone to doodle before a meeting, it's a great way to become present in the moment, which enhances our abilities to tap into our creativity. I heard about Mark Parker, who is in the corporate world, and he incorporates doodling in all his meetings. And he said, encourage doodling. Make lots of doodling materials available. Have pens, pencils, paper on the table, or position whiteboards around the room. And if you're chairing the meeting, lead by example. Some people still think that doodling during a meeting sends a message of lack or not paying attention. But whip out your notebook and start doodling as a way to kind of set the precedence for the meeting. Participants could be asked to be in small groups and they doodle together. Or maybe there's a large piece of paper and everyone is contributing on that piece of paper. And it's a fun way to break the ice and get everyone in the habit of doodling. You could even incorporate strategic doodling exercises throughout the meeting, like asking each group to visually represent an aspect of the workflow, or try a doodling only brainstorming. Does that not sound fun? I mean, I want to go to a corporate meeting where we doodle. And I have to say that one of my favorite restaurants that I go to is one where they have paper and crayons on the table. And it starts out with the waiter writing their name on the paper for you. And then from there, they encourage you to interact with the paper and the crayons. Now, can you imagine doing that for your own family? Spread out that paper around the table and have everybody draw or doodle, etc. So let's now delve into your doodles a little bit. You all know what your doodles look like, but do you know that they may have an unconscious revelation of what's lurking under the surface or the subconscious? Do you think they have a significant meaning? Well, of course they do. Or maybe not. So to interpret the doodle or not to, that is the question. And now, while that didn't really come from Shakespeare, there are many, many in the psychiatric world that use abstract doodles as an indication of mental health. For example, people who draw ladders and stairs, they're said to have goals or they're trying to escape from something. And there are many different ways to interpret doodles, but how would you interpret your doodles? Do you have repetitive patterns or repetitive themes? So I look at some of the repetitive things that I seem to doodle. and I draw certain patterns and formations and borders. But one of the things that I seem to doodle a lot in the very beginning was like a little snail for the longest time. And then it evolved into the Fibonacci formula, as you know, that that spiral, that mathematical formula for creation. So what can we make of that? Does that make me a genius? Probably not. Maybe not. Just indicates that I love that pattern. My eyes drawn to that. But there are some symbols that, according to graphologist Tracy Russell, not to confuse with psychologist, but graphologist, there's some general shapes and some meanings to these. So here's a couple of them. You ready? If you doodle lots of circles, it could suggest that you want to be included, or you want to feel loved, or you want to love more. Squares. Do you doodle squares? That suggests a down-to-earth, practical nature to you. If you are sketching out triangles, subliminally, it reveals a powerful and ambitious personality. So does that sound like you? Are you a triangler? If you are a doodler of hearts, well, they signify love and romance. And it could be that you're drawn to lots of affection, or you're a very sentimental person. Now, in your doodles, do you incorporate in spider webs? Now, this could indicate that you're good at persuading and enticing people. You would think that if somebody draws flowers all the time, that maybe they're an aficionado of Mother Nature, but it also has something else to do with your personality. For example, if your flowers have a large center to them, it shows confidence and that you enjoy a good social life. Now, if those centers are really tiny and you have more detail, it could be you're obsessive compulsive in your personality. If you draw 3D boxes, that could mean that you're very hardworking and solid. Now, all the shapes that we draw really do have to do with our basic needs. And all of these have a positive and a negative, and I had a tendency to just kind of give you the positive parts of it. Maybe some of you draw lots of eyes. So if you draw lots of eyes that are really big, maybe you're open to the world of possibilities. And small eyes could mean that maybe you're a little more introvert. So here's another question for you. Did you find that interesting? That different shapes could mean some different things. Do you doodle in color? And what colors are you drawn to? There are some significance and meanings to colors that could be very personal for you. For example, I had an artist come and present the meaning of color at my home. And I was so excited for her to come because she's a well-known artist here in this area. And I thought, okay, I want to know if I'm attracted to this color. What does that mean? And that and that and that. And I'm familiar with some of those things. But it really took a different twist in how she presented, but it made so much sense. And I wanted to pass that on to you because as a brain nerd and someone who loves to find out how things affect us emotionally, psychologically, physically, and I was excited to find out what the significance of the different colors are. And I was surprised as she asked each of us in regards to 8 different colors to write on a piece of paper what those colors meant to us. Now, here's the interesting part. There was only one color that all of us totally agreed on, and that was the color yellow. And for all of us, it meant cheery or happiness, full of sunshine. But for example, the color blue didn't always mean like sky color to people. And she suggested it could be your favorite color because maybe that was the color of your favorite vehicle that you owned. Or red could be your favorite because that was your favorite sweater that you wore all the time. So what I'm trying to say is by this, it could be that we're drawn to certain colors because of our association with them. So because we draw or attracted to something doesn't mean that psychologically there's a definite reason behind that. So wow, we could try to analyze our scribbles and our drawings, and it really can be as abstract as dreams. Dreams can be from a show that we saw the other day, or could be a situation or the news that we heard, or it could be the meeting we're currently in, or it could be the altercation I had at home, or anything that could affect the way we are feeling. It could be reflective of what we're listening to or currently the environment that we're in. And so those doodles actually are memory or remembrances of something maybe that's been discussed or being discussed. So what am I saying by this? Can we interpret our doodles? I think there's some things that could show some things, but only we are a true indicator of our interpretation. And so don't have your brother or your sister committed because you found doodles in a certain color and a certain design and not be open to the fact that there's so many interpretations of what a doodle can mean. But it could indicate that there are some internal and external things that are in the subconscious that are releasing that now come out on paper. And these are mindless drawings. So I offer the insights of others and myself as an invitation for you to try to understand your own doodles. But do doodle. Teach your family and your friends how to doodle. Do a doodle party. Have your boss listen to this podcast. But do your brain a favor. Give it that release valve, a permission to create. Let your pen go where it will. Any shape is the right shape. There are no rules of right or wrong doodling. The only thing that may not be correct is if you withhold from your brain, from your mind, from your emotions, from your hands, the blessed and the fun adventure of doodling. Just do it. Your brain wants to doodle. As always, I hope these things are helpful and fun. Try these things. Don't just listen, but let's try doodling this week. And if you want more information on some of these fun things, look back on some of the other podcasts that we have going. And level up. levelupteam.com/learn more. You can find more information on how we meet the brain where it is. Doodling is part of that curriculum. We invite you to come and learn. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next week.